see anybody else.
Okay, perfect. I will be on in just a second here.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep. Should I click off my cell phone? I got you on both.
Yeah, you can click off the cell phone then.
All right.
Hey, nice. We share the same poster.
All right. I've got something in the middle that says tap to bookmark favorite moment to download later. Should I hit?
Yeah, I mean, you can click the X. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so Stu, the reason we're doing these is, like I said, I just got done doing it with Greg. Last week I did it with Chuck. I'm doing it with Carl Lee next week, is to kind of help give people an idea of, you know, some cool things to like talk about, the things that they can ask and stuff like that, just to jump on a call and we can see how long it takes. Some we've been 20 minutes, some have been 40, just kind of just chatting a little bit.
Sure.
And then what we do is we can slice up some of the questions and then I can utilize that for social media. And I can even throw it on like, you know, I made a couple posts on you and your wife's, you know, Facebook account from we talked about and kind of threw that out there. And so that's pretty much just what we're doing. And at the end, what we'll do is we'll just kind of do like, have you do kind of like a promo saying, hey guys, if you know what I mean? Like if you want to talk about the good old days and, you know, would love to talk to you fans, hit me up on CSR.
Great.
How are you doing today, by the way?
What's that?
I said, how are you doing today, by the way?
Good. Yeah, it's hot. I'm going to go out and play tennis later on. So life is good. Unfortunately, a lot of these charity golf events have been canceled. So I miss kind of socializing with the old teammates and some friends that you usually see quite a bit during the summer. But as I said, this is the new normal, I guess.
I know. Yeah. And I think it kind of just sucks for everyone. And like you said, like all the events being canceled, obviously the season being the big one right now.
Well,
let's knock on.
We had a Zoom call with the Vikings set up with the alumni, try to answer some questions and new things. And I'll tell you what, it's I would say it's iffy right now. The preseason, they've already canceled half the preseason. I think they might cancel it all. And then, of course, the big game of the year is the first game with the Packers on like the 13th, and you could sell 200,000 tickets to that game, and I'm sure it'll be limited fans, if any.
Well, and I saw too that if a player tests positive, that it's like automatically IR for 3 weeks. Well, which again, you can imagine.
I see something on the news that like 75 tested positive yesterday or something somewhere. So not Vikings, but all in the league. And
no, but yeah, it's mainly I think the South teams, but still, it's just
Never thought of you. Well, if you live long enough, I guess you see everything with this pandemic and plus the unrest. It's strange times for pro sports. I guess everybody's monitoring how baseball and basketball and hockey will do, and life in the bubble, playing in Orlando, some of this stuff. I'm sure the logistics are crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. Well, Stu, hey, thanks for joining us today. We've got some questions from fans that we'd just love to kind of ask and just kind of have a chat with you. So the first kind of question that we wanted to ask you is, so what was it like, or what's your fondest memory of your rookie year?
Well, my rookie year was all fond memories because I came from a college program, University of Wisconsin, where we didn't have winning teams. And you're going then in 1970 to a team that just the year before 1969 went to the Super Bowl. So I knew I was going to the team that was loaded, a lot of great players. Being a fan of professional football, I knew some of the names, and I think it was interesting and fun and scary that first time you get in the locker room with the likes of Alan Page and Carl Eller and Jim Marshall, and then a day later you're trying to block them in drills. So it was a dream come true, but it was, you always wonder. I mean, there's a big jump from college to pro football, and you got to make the team and make a very good team, and that was exciting. That was the challenge in front of you, and every day. And of course, you're at Mankato, where the days were like today, where it's 95 degrees and sunny and humid. And I can remember listening to the local radio station in Mankato, and they said there was a cattle warning that the cattle, they thought so much they had to be in the barn because it's too hot for cattle to be outside. But the Vikings would practice twice a day, so it was hard work, but well worth it.
Well, and that was back when you guys had not many restrictions like they do now with two-a-days and padded practices and everything like that.
Well, I guess they call them the good old days now, but they certainly that afternoon practice after having a tough practice in the morning and afternoons when you really would do the scrimmaging that, you'd start about 3 o'clock and get done about 5:15 and about 4:30 to have the scrimmage. And most guys were dragging, but I think that's where the coaches really could evaluate things and see which guys wanted it the most. And it was different than today. I would say it was a little harder, but obviously a lot of things have changed, salaries and practice conditions. And that's what we knew at the time. And I was always kept a smile on my face because this is what I said I wanted to do. And I was finally getting a chance to do it.
That's awesome. Stu, do you mind making sure that just gets tilted up so we can see you? There was a couple times where we only saw your mouth.
Okay, like this. Is that good?
Yep, that's perfect. So, and just so you know, some of this will be cut out so that all this is being recorded. So,
sure.
Awesome. Well, no, that's great to hear. So another, popular question is, Bud Grant is considered one of the best coaches, obviously the best coach that the Vikings have ever had. And so what is Megan, one of your fondest memories of, playing under Bud Grant?
Well, I've had a long relationship with Bud Grant, not just the 11 years playing, but I think they did 15 or 16 years broadcasting the games. And part of that was doing the Bud Grant show while he was coaching in the 80s before he retired. And he's quite a guy. He's got a patient, common sense approach to everything. And even in practices, not a guy with a lot of words. In those days, I mean, you didn't initiate conversations with Bud. There was a kind of a sense of awe, but he was a guy that was all business. He let the player position coaches, whether it be Jerry Burns or John Michaels, in my case, the offense coordinator and the line coach, that they would do the talking, interact. Bud would kind of oversee things. And if he spoke, boy, you listened, because that means he had something important to tell you. And, he was, I think, hard to play for, but as a result, the success speaks for itself. And I think what guys realize that if you're going to be in the league, being a losing team in the league is no good for anybody. Coaches get fired, players get cut, careers are cut short. And as a result, I think we were always happy that we had a team that in the 11 years I played, that we were always competitive. I think we missed the playoffs one time, and that's what you play for. I mean, paychecks were a lot smaller in those days, so an extra playoff check or two meant a lot to a player.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's the success, obviously speaks for itself. And we obviously all wish we would have, won one of them. But it's amazing to be really competitive. Actually, I feel like people don't realize, like, when you start looking at all the teams over the past, how many decades, going back to the 60s, of all the teams that have made the playoffs, the Vikings are actually way up there. We average about once every other year because of it. It's just unfortunate at the end. We just haven't been able to get it yet. But it just goes back to, Bud Grant really started that tradition and really started our success as a franchise, really, catapulting that.
But I think also what he did, and I think it benefited me in the long run, he went with players that he was always concerned about playing mistake-free football. He put a real premium on veteran players. So he saw some long careers. My gosh, I mean, I would think my career 11 years is a long time, but then you see the Fran Tarkingtons, the Carl Ellers, the Alan Page, Mick Tingloffs, 15, 16, 17 years careers, which are pretty unheard of today. Although there's a few Tom Brady types out now that played a long time. That was a different era. I mean, a quarterback could play, and I think Tarkenton probably played 15, 16 years. But for the average player, it was, in those days, the statistics would say that the average playing career is like 2 or 3 years. And he kept guys that would not make mistakes, that would play hard, come to camp in shape. There were no off-season training routines or anything. You might get a letter from the trainer, Fred Zamberletti, to do some push-ups and sit-ups, and nothing like today where they have all these off-season training camps and guys have a facility they can go to that they feel comfortable working out. In the old days, of course, it's interesting that we would share the locker room at Met Stadium with the Twins, so we really couldn't get in there before the Twins, got done in October. We would practice at Midway Stadium in St. Paul and Snelling, which was kind of a dumpy old stadium with a a cement floor, and you had little lockers where you literally hang your clothes on nails, and it was pretty basic. A shower that probably built for 4 or 5 people would have to accommodate a staff there and coaches of 40 players. So things were different, things were fun, a lot of camaraderie, and I think it's one of the reasons also we were successful. The players all got along. I mean, there was no friction between players or players and coaches. Not a lot of the dramatic stuff that happens nowadays.
Yeah, that's like you said, it's a completely different era. It's a completely just different game in its sense, even though we love it. You know, I mean, like both. Again, I wish I could have seen some of those good old days. Unfortunately, I wasn't born yet. But I always say, like, I wish I could have gone to the Met. Again, I only know it as obviously Mall of America and can see it through YouTube and whatnot. But with that, what is one of your fondest memories, again, at the Met?
Well, I think the fondest ones, I think we clinched to go to the Super Bowl twice at Met Stadium, and that was fun. I mean, you talk about the Met Stadium, that's iconic, huge parking lot. I mean, I'm not sure if the Vikings or the Packers invented tailgating, but the lots are so big, people would come, bring their campers. Some people would bring their boats from Lake Minnetonka on a trailer and party in the boats. People got married in the parking lot. I always thought it was interesting. In those days, the day after, on Mondays after a Sunday game, we would have kind of a little practice for a film session and report injuries. You'd always see cars left there, campers, Weber grills still on, 10 to 20,000 bottles of beer and liquor, and it was crazy. But my fans, I've always said, many fans come up to me and said that was the best era of Viking football because they had the most fun. I mean, my gosh, so one couple got married in the parking lot. Another time, somebody came in a hot air balloon that was supposed to land in the parking lot, missed the parking lot, landed in the river, which is just a little bit south down Cedar. So it was wild times, and people loved that. I think when we went to the Metrodome, it was kind of to the dome and home. There wasn't places downtown set up for tailgating, and it changed. So, I think it was really kind of the golden era of Viking football. It was fun. It was, everything was smaller scale. Now the game has gotten so big. Who would have thought that with the TV and all the different ways of promoting football and ESPN being 24/7, that football went from, I thought, a very popular era to just exploding into an era where it's, my gosh, we have our own NFL channel nowadays.
I was say probably something you couldn't even fathom at that point.
Not at the time. I mean, the Vikings, when I first signed, their offices were on Penn Avenue in the Southtown Center on 494 in Penn. And they had probably Bud and Jim Finks, the general manager, who's also in the Hall of Fame, had a couple secretaries. I think Bud had 4 coaches. And after they left to go to the France Avenue site, the space that they left was taken over by a Radio Shack. That's how small it was. Now, if you look at the new, I'm sure you've been at the new facility. It's mega. I don't know. I mean, they could have a couple hundred employees out there. And it's state of the art, and the weight room is, unbelievable, bigger than any health club. So it kind of points out, and with the old guys, and I see some of them, we go to practices, it's amazing what's happened. The Coach Zimmer has probably a staff of 15, 18, 20 coaches, consultants, and 3 trainers. And my gosh, they have their own little snack bar and restaurant and video. I think they do a lot of their video and some out there. So
all that.
It's all good too. I think all the former players like myself appreciate how far it's gone, and it's and I think we pride ourselves, and we were the people that started off the football in in the 50s and early 60s. Football and pro football was much smaller than college football. Now it's, they're both big, but this with TV and all this different hype that they get, it's gone into just not just then an international game. When I was broadcasting, we did games in London, Sweden, in fact London twice, in Sweden. So you'd be playing the Bears in Gothenburg, Sweden, and you're going, my gosh. And of course they've tried to get NFL football in Europe. It's still, football over there is still soccer, so it hasn't gotten there yet, but I'm sure
it's a work in progress.
Absolutely.
So, well, that's awesome. Well, so, everyone knows that you wore number 83. So one of the questions that always kind of comes up is, so how did you pick that number 83, or how were you assigned, or how did 83 come about?
83 came about. It was assigned. I was a running back in college, wore the number 40, and you show up and you don't beggars can't be choosers. You get the number. I mean, it wasn't like I was going to get 88 or 81 because they were taken by future Hall of Famers. And you go to training camp. I mean, in those days also, there was probably only you brought in training camp, probably 20 rookies. You had, I think in those days, the more rounds in the draft. I think they had 12, 14 rounds in the draft. And you just came and we had a guy named Stubby Eason. He just, all of a sudden there's number 83 with Voigt on it. I go, I didn't have the status to go in and say, I'd like number 10 or something like that. Some of that stuff wasn't going to happen. So it was fine. Rookies. And then there was a hazing that went on. You had to sing your school song or any other different songs the veterans wanted at dinner at night. You stand on a chair and do that with your hand over your heart. So some of the stuff you come from kind of being at least thinking you have some status in college to go into a team that was a rowdy, fun-loving team, and
you get humbled pretty quick.
Oh my gosh! And you just do observe and keep your mouth shut, and it all kind of works out. And I think that if there had been some cases, even when I was playing, there's some rookies come in and they might think they're a little more elevated than they are, and they get pranked or they get dressed down, but in the coaches, Jerry Burns coached with the offense coordinator when I was playing, and would become the head coach of the Vikings. He coached in Lombardi like 2 or 3 years when they won Super Bowls. So these are all veteran coaches, so they'd done and seen it all. So they didn't really. Rookies had to be seen but not heard, and then establish themselves by showing a real work ethic on the field. And as you said, it all worked out. And a lot of guys didn't like it. A lot of guys that I thought had a chance to make the team just because of their attitude and their thinking it's the same as college, didn't give it their best shot. Maybe they went on to be in other teams, but a lot of number one draft choices, they didn't quite work out because I think nothing was, given to somebody. You had to earn it. And that was Bud's
really good point.
His principle. Whether you were a free agent, a low draft choice, a high draft choice, when you started, you're all in the same bucket. You had to make the team.
Yeah. Okay. So another question is actually kind of going off of that is, obviously a football team, you guys are together all the time. Some of you guys are friends. Some of you guys, may not like each other, a lot of jokesters and everything that there. But so one question we get a lot of the times too is, so what was either a fondest memory, who was the big jokester, or do you remember any kind of things some of the camaraderie kind of stories?
Well, there was different, everybody got along. That was the one thing, but there were different, I would call them the hunter country boy types that loved, any spare time they were talking about pheasant hunting, going deer hunting. And of course, Bud was huge in that. I can remember many Saturdays before games when we broke camp in Mankato that he would be hunting that day, and we had to be at the old Holiday Inn on 34th Avenue and 494 to check in the night before a home game. And he had been out many times. You see him walking in his camouflage clothes that he had been. You'd think a coach would be just pouring over game film and game plans and what's going to happen in the game, but he had been out hunting with his son, Mike, who's a longtime coach at Eden Prairie, and different. And then there were some guys that I played with over the years were kind of fancy guys. I always think of I had a locker was in between Ahmad Rashad and Sammy White, two great players, but totally different guys. Ahmad might come to practice in a Brioni suit and have jeans on and hair not combed, but everybody got along and everybody appreciated that we came from different walks of life. So there was pranksters. I always remember the late great linebacker Wally Hilgenberg was a prankster that would always be, and we'd play jokes on the coaches. Jerry Burns had a real fear of insects, so of course we'd put insects in these film cans. It's so old now that you use tape, but it used to be film cans. You open up and a spider or something fly out and he'd have a conniption fit. So a lot of jokes, but he had a pretty good sense of humor too. So it was always fun. You had to keep it light. And you worked hard, but you were together and always had good roommates that were fun that you didn't. I roomed with Tarkington for a couple of seasons and on the road and training camp. So it was, and he was quite a guy. I learned a lot from him, from his New York experience, that he had a lot of things kind of, put his arm around you and said, hey, think about this. Yeah. One thing I appreciate with Franz, he was always talking about a life after football or keeping the balance where you're not, you got plenty of time on your hands in the off season, develop some interests or some, the profession you go into. So it all panned out. I think one of the reasons we had success is the fact that we all got along pretty well. I mean, they're guys, black and white from different areas, kind of southern, northern, West Coast guys. Everybody got along well, and I think that's why we functioned pretty well as a team. We had obviously star players, but everybody kind of did there was role players, guys, just special teams players. It all worked out. But there's, you think of the Belichicks and the Parcells, the new coaches. Some of these great coaches have a way of getting the most out of their players, and that's no easy task sometimes because you're dealing with a lot of big guys with healthy egos, and you got to kind of channel that into, because the only statistic that really means things are wins and losses. I mean, I think Bud was also you bring in some veterans. I played with 1 year in 1973 with a great player named Carroll Dale who played with the Packers, and he was won 2 or 3 Super Bowls with the Packers, and he would say about even those great Packer teams that no one cared about how many statistics you had, how many catches you had or touchdowns. The only thing that matters is work as a team and get the wins. And so many times now I get whoop, did we get hit off here? Hello.
Hello. Sorry, I should have warned you about that. So since that's I had you do the call duration up to 20 minutes. And so that wasn't you, that was me.
Okay. Wow. So in other words, I mean, we had a bunch of veterans from other teams come in, and I think what you learned is, and it might be a little bit of my gripe with today's players is, incentives in the contract. It's kind of built for some individual goals. In other words, you get so many catches or you start so many games. I think you do best when you're just focused on getting that win, whether the defense wins the game for you, the offense, or your kicker gets a field goal. That's the bottom line. You work. I mean, my gosh, I love to catch the football as much as anybody. But if you had a game where you got no balls targeted you or you won the game,
blocking or whatnot. Honestly, I think what you're bringing up. I think a great person to potentially even kind of relate and obviously plays your position is kind of Kyle Rudolph right now. You know what I mean? Like, stats, we obviously even drafted Irv Smith, but you don't hear those complaints. You understand that. I was actually looking at a stat yesterday. Kyle Rudolph had as many blocks last year, or just about as many blocks as he did, pass, like on our targets.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's the other thing. You have to come. That's part of football, obviously, with fantasy football, all this. I mean, my gosh, the statistics, targets and all that. I mean, that was really, even the sack of the quarterback never came in until probably the early 70s. I mean, they had to reconstruct some of Eller's and Marshall's and Page's sacks because that was just tackling the quarterback. That was your job. That was now a defensive lineman is basically, well, how good is he? Well, how many sacks he had, and that. And he realized the greatness of the front four, which I do because I had to practice against them all the time. Was ability they would stop the run, they would rush the passer. Many times they're double teamed to get them from the corner. Still they got the sacks, but now and I've got a friend JJ Watt that plays with Houston, and he's a great player, no question. But it seems like too many times it's well, how good's the receiver? Well, how many catches did he have? How good's the defensive end? How many sacks did he have? Well, I think, hats off to Kyle Rudolph, who's a heck of a guy. That he's a complete player, and that's for old guys like myself. That's kind of the name of the game. If you have to block all game long, that's what a tight end has to do. If you get a chance to get open, which a lot of times in the short yardage and down near in the red zone near the goal line, the tight end's your best weapon because it gets pretty tight down there where the wide receivers don't have that room like they have in the middle of the field. So a guy like Kyle Rudolph with that size is so important. But I'm sure he was frustrated not getting the ball, which we all are. We all love to get a lot of passes and a lot of accolades, but the biggest accolade you could have is you're part of a winning team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, even kind of going off of that then a little bit, is there like one particular catch, again, that you really kind of remember, like, that really kind of sticks out and you like to kind of talk about?
Well, yeah. In fact, it's on the wall here. I had a catch against the Cleveland Browns. It wasn't kind of a diving catch that made the front page of the Star Tribune, and somebody blew it up for me. So it's on the wall here in my office, which has got a bunch of pictures. I'm looking at one here of Fran Tarkenton handing the ball off to Chuck Foreman. He wrote a few things. A great friend, great player, and there's so many memories that also made. You're probably too young, but then a guy, late night host named Johnny Carson, that put that on Monday night. He used to have the highlights, and that made his show. And my gosh, I mean, I can remember when Monday Night Football first started. In fact, somebody sent me a tape of the game. Monday Night Football when it first started was so small time. It looked like like a private local channel or something like it. We played the Colts, who had a good team, and it was a big game, and I think we won 10-3 at Met Stadium. But the camera work and everything looked like something from the 1800s or something. Yeah. And it was funny. I mean, that and Monday Night Football used to be a big deal. I know the Vikings. We had a Viking alumni group that would meet at it was called the Decathlon Club on 494 to watch Monday Night Football, because that was always the deal. Was they picked the best game to be on Monday night, and of course the Vikings, when we played somebody big as the Cowboys or the Colts, were big in those days. That was a huge game. Now, of course, you got a couple games on Monday night, and you're playing Saturday night and Thursday night. And I don't begrudge that, because the trickle down is every time there's a collective bargaining agreement, players like myself get a nice bump in the pension. Yeah. So it was a fun business then because of the fun and the camaraderie and all that. Now with the money involved, I mean, Pat Mahomes' future contract would have been bigger than the economy it was in 1970.
Yeah. It's insane. Like you just talked about, it's a different, different era. But, again, like I think it's important to bring up that, with some of these new CBAs, it's kind of nice that they're finally trying to take some bigger strides, even kind of thank you guys and take care of you guys who really laid the foundation, because the Kyle Rudolphs, be there because of you. The, Patrick Holmes would be there because of the Fran Tarkentons. AP wouldn't be there because of Chuck Foreman. So I think it's really good. And sometimes it's easy to forget because we don't have, there's not as much on YouTube. There's not as much because, like, you go back to the production quality of back then compared to today, it's just, again, it's 180,
It was unbelievable. The other thing I just thought of now, that in the old days, that games were blacked out here in the Twin Cities. In other words, and it wasn't a sellout. I always thought we had sellouts, but some guys would say, "Oh well, I had to drive down to Rochester, go up to St. Cloud." Yeah, there was a 60-mile or 90-mile area where games were blacked out because they were worried about attendance. And I think Met Stadium didn't hold more than 48,000 people or something like that, and none of the baseball configured stadiums. So you'd be on the 50-yard line and be 50 yards away from the field because of the baseball configuration. That Vikings went to the Dome. That was a great place. But even that, when these new stadiums came in, that looked like kind of near the end, it looked kind of like a dump, So but the U.S. Bank now is a fabulous stadium. So
I don't know if you saw it. Actually got ranked. The Athletic ranked it number one amongst all stadiums across the league, amongst all beat writers. They voted it number one.
Oh, really? I'm just, in fact, anxious to see what. Somebody sent me a picture of the new Las Vegas stadium, which is supposed to be fabulous. And I mean, I'm sure the ones out there in California. I mean, that's every year state of the art, and it's a good business to be in. Some of these owners. I was watching something last night on that I taped on ESPN. There was Drew Bledsoe was a quarterback for the Patriots who got replaced by Tom Brady. Well, he was number one draft choice, and that Mr. Kraft bought the team for $182 million way back when in the early 80s. Oh my gosh! I mean, every team now is valued well over $1 billion.
Oh yeah, it's insane.
So it's a business. I mean, really good business.
Yeah.
But what comes with that with players, I would say also the only downer of some of the stuff, and that a lot of it does take its toll. And my gosh, from some of my early teammates off that '69 Super Bowl team, we've lost a few because of a lot of these head injuries or just I think it's and then the NFL is trying to help that. It's still a dangerous game. They're trying to make it safer by, as you mentioned, controlling practice, the hitting you can do, because there was no rules and regs. So got to give a little bit of hats off to the NFLPA, the Player Association, who really kind of makes it as safe as it can be. But once the whistle blows, it gets to be a pretty rough and tough game.
Yeah.
No matter what you come from.
No, absolutely. So, hey, Stu, when you were growing up, who were some players that you looked up to or kind of admired, or, it could be either tight ends, it could be who you kind of just were playing backyard football, but who were some of the legends that you looked up to?
Well, interesting that I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. So, knock on wood, I was a Packer fan growing up. Literally, you would go to church. Games were always on at 1 o'clock, and you go to church to maybe 11 o'clock church, and my dad, all the dads in the sitting in the pews would be jingling their chains. They wanted to get home, and you'd set up a TV tray and a Swanson TV dinner and watch the Packers. So my heroes were Paul Hornung, number 5 Hall of Famer, and of course Bart Starr and Ray Nitschke from the Packers. And that I thought that was just the greatest thing. Then you watch the game and then go out and play a little side yard football, and didn't know much about the Vikings. I mean, in fact, in those days, when you got drafted, you had never heard from a team. They'd say, Dallas used to be kind of forward thinking. They'd send out some questionnaires, but it wasn't like today where everybody knew these combines and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there were some scouts watching Big Ten football. So, but it has all changed. It was very different. And when I got picked by the Vikings, you kind of go, that's great. Obviously I knew about the Vikings, but
well, I mean, that's got to be weird. You know what I mean? I just again, I'm really curious to see, you know what I mean, like how your feelings were for that or your family's feelings for it. Obviously super excited, but to, you know what I mean, again, obviously with Minnesota, we're happy that we got you from a Packers fan to a Vikings fan, but
oh yeah,
how did that kind of go? I'm just curious.
Well, it was interesting because, and my folks were, I mean, good fans, but I mean, it was a Packer era and they had been so successful. And, even then, of course, we had in the 11 years I played, we had a dominance of the Packers. I think only they won the division in 1972, the year Tarkanian came back and beat us out by a game. We had I think it's only a 8-6 year. He played 14 games, but gee, would win. And my folks would either, whether it be at Lambeau or up here, they would come, and I could tell they were happy that their son did well, but they were a little grumbling about the Packers. And I was glad because the Packers, I mean, that was maybe a dream to play there, but it worked out because we had such a control of that Central Division in those days that it was, I usually had bragging rights when I went back home because they were down. Of course, that all can change quickly. The Packers are up now. The Vikings seem to be, but it usually comes down. That's the nemesis, the Vikings and the Packers. Well,
I'm sure, like you said, they kind of made it fun, there. But I just think that's such like a, again, unique kind of, again, situation because you don't get that a ton, again, these days. But especially going from there, it almost even reminds me of, Steve Jordan and Cam Jordan. He's talked about that a little bit, like when the Saints had played the Vikings, where super happy for your son, but like still, like that's my team,
Oh, absolutely. Hey, what that. He wore number 83.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
All out to the guy he is, and over the years, and I think the one thing that was interesting about and everything kind of gets full circle. When I my first year broadcasting, of course, I work with Ray Scott, the legendary broadcaster, and Ray Scott and Tony Canadeo did the games for years, and to hear that, I could identify that voice even before we got to work together. That Ray was kind of the preeminent announcer, and again, through him, got to meet some of the great announcers. Jack Buck, who was a great announcer, his kid now is an announcer in sports. So you meet, and Hank Stram was doing the games with Jack Buck on the NBC game. So you meet all these guys, and when you're a fan, when you're a player, that's great. But when you're a lifetime fan, like I was of baseball and basketball and football, when you meet some of these guys, you're going like, that's pretty neat. So it's been a good ride all these years. And to stay in town, a lot of my teammates left. Usually the Southern guys didn't like the winter, so they'd go home, and different guys from the West Coast, they'd play and come back. But there's a real nucleus of guys that stuck around, whether it be the Bob Lertzimas or the Wally Hilgenbergs. I just played golf with
Chuck and Alan Page, and all of them.
Benefit obviously a great town to live in, but it's fun because people love the Vikings. I mean, this is. God bless the Twins and the Timberwolves and all that and the Wild, but this is a Viking town. When that season's going on, it's all Vikings, and that's pretty neat that a lot of guys are around. I mean, I just got a call from a guy named Autry Beeman that played with the team the last night. And Autry's a good guy. And, we have reunions, and the Vikings have an alumni division that they have some events, and it's fun. It's proudly living and breathing purple like everybody else around this town.
No, that's great to hear, and we love to hear that because, as you can tell, we all bleed purple here, and it's like you said, it's a Vikings town for sure. So. So, hey, who is your favorite current tight end, or who do you like watching? Either like maybe compares to you, or just like you just say like, oh, that's really kind of cool, has revolutionized the position, or just any kind of comments like with some of the current tight ends.
Well, I've followed him over the years. I guess I think one of the all-time greats is Gronk. Obviously, and I'll be interested to see because he is as indestructible as he appeared when he was playing, and I liked him because he, very big guy first of all. Combination receiver and blocker, and of course it helps to have Brady and they go to him, but he made a lot of big catches. Whether he's got any gas left in the tank, I think he had some injuries, so he was probably state of the art. I mean, the position long ago was kind of split in half. You used to be, even by the time I got done, and Joe Sensor was a very, very good tight end, receiving tight end. I mean, he kind of took my place there, and he came, I think, 1979, and was inactive 1 year, but I never lined up more than a yard away from either tackle. I mean, there was no going to the backfield, this and that. You were an inline blocker, and that's what you did. And obviously, when you have the likes of Sammy White and John Gilliam and Ahmad Rashad, and we always, for years, probably not until the last couple of years, did they go to. I would stay in the game for every down. I mean, then near the end, they said, okay, we might have third and long, 3 wide receivers. I mean, it was pretty much set game. Now the game is all down and distance and situation substitution. I mean, you could have 4 wide receivers, 5 wide receivers. I mean, it's changed. It's really kind of, as Jerry Burns would call it, the NBA on cleats. It's like you're gonna try to fool guys with formations and motions. That was not really, even by the time I got done in 1980, that it still hadn't happened. Now, there's no shotgun. Dallas may have thrown that in there, but everything was kind of the same. They used to, as they call it, square helmet football, where you would tell the opposition knew what you're going to do, and the problem was, can you stop it? Can you stop the Green Bay sweep? Can you stop the Vikings running off tackle? I mean, there was no fooling people into we're going to trick somebody with some unusual play. Now the unusual play is part of it, and I think the fans like it. And our game used to be, a big game would be, oh gee, the Vikings beat the Packers 14-7. My gosh, now they love when the Vikings beat the Packers 45-42.
It's definitely different.
So it's the game evolves and things evolve, and it's very interesting to see what's new. And the statistics are amazing. They'll have, I read, you read Sid Hartman's column like anybody else, and they've got more ratings. Well, this guy had the most targets, and this guy he was the best 13th best offensive left guard in the league, and they're going, that never was a thing. So the coverage is amazing too. I mean, it's 24/7 with ESPNs and the football channels. What everybody's even had for breakfast.
Yep. No, it's definitely changed. So, well, hey, Stu, I really, really appreciate it. This was an awesome insight to chatting with you, to answering some questions and just kind of going over your career and all the great personalities and just the fun stories. So I really want to say I really appreciate you taking the time. This was an honor for me to chat with you as a lifelong Vikings fan. And so I just want to say thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Ben. I tell you what, it's really fun. I don't talk as much football as I used to, but I still love it. And to get to open up, I go, oh yeah, maybe that'd be interesting, talking about the old facilities and different things. I don't want to come off as an old geezer.
No, all that little stuff is awesome.
The fun of it is going from where I was as a kid following pro football, which was in, probably started in 1960 doing that, to where the game's evolved. I'm proud of pro football. There's been some real good changes for the betterment of the athlete, and it's certainly a big money. I mean, it's a pro football is a big business, but I think when you're in town and that's your team, it's so neat to see the difference. What happened? I mean, I always would sit at the feet of the Fran Tarkenton's and the Bill Browns and the Mick Tingelhoffs of my era to what they went through even before me. So, and I think we're proud of Viking alumni. The present day Vikings stand on the shoulders of the guys that made this team. I mean, it started in this team. I think 5 guys got together to put in $50,000 in 1961 to have the franchise. I mean, my gosh, that's that would be a good part.
I was say, that'd probably be a rookie having to pick that up as a initiation team.
And fighting over $17,000 contracts, it's all fun. I mean, there's no downside, and we laugh about it. Whether I'm getting together with a Bob Lertzema or Paul Krause, that it's neat. I would have missed that by going back to Wisconsin or living in California. I mean, it's fun because it's Vikings 365 days a year.
No, and that's awesome to hear. So, well, thank you, Stu. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Okay, hey Stu. Actually, so what I'm going to do is we've just got a minute left here. Do you want to do like your 10 or 15 second, like, hey guys, if you want to chat with me, kind of thing? So.
Oh, sure. Tell me when to just start. Hey guys, Stu Voigt here. I love to talk football with you, whether it's Viking football, my 11-year playing career, or my 16-year broadcast career of the Vikings on the radio. Let's talk Vikings, past, present, and future. Look forward to talking with you.
Perfect. There we go. Well, again, so why we do that is, again, this just gives some content. It also gives people an idea of what they can kind of talk about. So,
yeah, I've been to the site. I'm raring to go. Looks like it's set up well, and thanks for talking through how to handle all
and I'll be in touch with you, and we'll look to kind of do some more of these. And honestly, like I said, if you have any other questions, Stu, or anything like that, you have my number and everything. Please reach out.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, I'm all for it. I think it's great. I mean, it's obviously. Is it how's?
It's going well. It's just, with these things is like, it takes a little bit of time. Like I'll say, so they have a really good platform here, but when I walked in, there was no marketing or no marketing strategy. So just knowing that, that stuff takes time and energy. So we're just trying to build the stuff, but I think we're building up something pretty cool. So.
Let me ask you, is there anything to compare with this?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to jump off, but I have to jump right back in. I'll do it real quick.
Sure.
I have to kind of talk to them about if they want me to kind of continue to do this, I got to do it 20 minutes capped. But no, so the cool thing about this is that, we're starting with again, obviously the Vikings. And, it's because that the person, or again, pretty much where this is developed was from here. And so the idea, though, is to eventually actually expand to all 32 teams. And also we're actually doing fantasy football now. So that's, we're actually getting fantasy done, which, as you can kind of imagine, if I could jump on and talk to kind of a fantasy person about my lineup, that'd be kind of a cool thing. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, now let me ask you, I'm looking at the site. Do you have a problem? What happens with the present day act? I see Avante Collins or someone. What do you have with, are the present day players contractually involved?
So we're just trying to get them, again, some of them are just, obviously we're trying to work our way up to kind of the Thielens, the Kirks, again, stuff like that. And so, no, there's nothing that really prevents them from doing it. It's just that, as you kind of know, sometimes we only have one shot. Obviously, some of them, again, can be skeptical, or we have to go through more people to kind of get them. So we're trying to just kind of work our way up there. But obviously, the idea would be eventually, again, you could do the Kirks, you could do, Thielens, Kyle Rudolph.
What the team?
Yeah, so the Vikings have actually been really for it as well. They're kind of telling us hey, we want you guys to kind of, it reminds me kind of Shark Tank when, someone goes on Shark Tank and then, Mark Cuban's like, well, hey, I want you to kind of prove it a little bit and then come back to me and we'll look to be their partner or invest. The Vikings have kind of said the same thing, hey, we want you to kind of prove it a little bit out and just kind of work through some of the bugs and just, doing that type of stuff. And then the idea would be, though, that we could have a partnership with them where they could help promote this, or even have scheduled times, hypothetically for you guys, they could help us kind of schedule times, and then they obviously get a cut, you guys get a cut, so it's kind of everybody wins.
Well, because of my impression, and I'm around there pretty, as much as any old player could be, probably more. But it seems like the Wilfs are forward-thinking guys. I mean, Mike and Ziggy are good guys. I mean, they're got a lot of money, obviously, but I think they. I think this is kind of the future, and I don't know if you work with Bob Hagan at all.
So,
he's a wonderful guy.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I don't know if you know this. So I actually used to work for the Vikings, but I only worked for 06 and 07. But it's kind of funny when you throw out all the names like Bob Hagan and Luther Hippie, you know what I mean? Chad Lundeen, all those guys. So I worked with them back then. And so it's just kind of fun. Like I don't work with them directly, I know as much anymore, but I got to know them pretty personally when I worked there.
Yeah, but I think generally, and of course I know all, whether it be Lester, and I mean some of these guys I've known, and I think it's a pretty good organization. I mean, I'm kind of proud of them, but I mean, as you think they, because I've always, in the old days, it used to be we were kind of the fly, Minnesota, even though we had great teams, we were kind of the flyover area. I mean, you had the coast, each coast loved their guy, whether the Redskins was an nemesis, Rams. I mean, it's kind of like the Vikings, huh? I mean, what do they, and I think we've always been, but the fandom of not just Minnesota, but Green Bay is fantastic. I mean, they're really but there's more numbers out of the coast.
Exactly. So that's, and like you kind of talked about is, even so like when I worked there 06, 07, it was just when the Wilfs kind of started coming up, and you could just even hear from the people there, just even like the transition from McCombs to Wilfs. You know what I mean? Like, again, again, it's crazy when people care, when people actually aren't, looking at everything as a monetary, like, you know what I mean? Like every penny, it's crazy what can happen. Yeah.
That was Red. Yeah. Red was and I served at the pleasure of all these guys. So, I mean, I was the broadcast, but it's a couple of years I'd be paid by the Vikings, a couple of years by the radio station. And, Red was a piece of work, and I heard stories now from the people that he literally, how's the, don't use too many pencils.
I know, like literally, so, and then when we were there, like it was just amazing. So at Winter Park, again, so I started in 06, and so I worked with kind of the facilities crew and then the operations crew for again, all the stuff that happened, and then I worked with like Dennis Ryan on the field. But it was amazing though, walking in there and seeing all the stuff that had been done, like adding those 2 fields in the back, adding that addition onto Dennis Ryan's, and thinking like, we didn't even have this. Like it was crazy. So that, again, you guys at Winter Park had, metal lockers. Those were literally taken out, and we used those in the garage to store oil and paint, just to talk about like how crazy, like that was actually what, the Moss and, everybody high end, all of our athletes and celebrities were using. But now, again, it was so bad that it's literally just using, for oil and paint.
Well, I mean, the whole thing's changed. Plus with, when I went from being a player to being part of the media, I mean, the media has changed way back. I mean, even the people that covered the game for, we had Ray Scott's brother, Hal Scott, worked for Channel 4. He was a sports guy before Rosen came in. Rosen was a little, understudy. But I mean, and then they got him, Dick Gordon, the writers for the papers, other than Sid, who was, Sid got he's a character, a great friend, but he's kind of a weird guy, Geez, the old sports reporters were, they'd see him as we're practicing. They'd be down by the goalpost. They'd have a little flask, and they were taking a little drink. And they're all, to me, guys in their 20s. They all seemed like they're 80 years old. They probably were 60 or something. But I mean, it was hard. It was a different group that they would. Now, of course, most reporters are young guys. Other than Sid, I'm sure somebody's ghosting Sid's column for him, but. The whole thing's changed. I mean, it's cleaned up now, where it's a squeaky clean kind of, urban. We're all cool guys, and the sports reporters have their shows, and then fantasy football comes in, and that's like, man, early on, fantasy football was guys from the coast called me years ago about fantasy football, and then one guy would do the statistics himself way back. This is in Carmel. I go like, what's fantasy football and what's this? Now it's all computer driven, and guys have shows just all about fantasy football. I'm going, it's kind of neat to look. In other words, you make me feel old, but it's like, geez, things have changed so much that fantasy football and then sports betting. I mean, it used to be that sports betting was big, but when I was playing, they had a place called the Left Guard, which was on 494. Now it's the Menards.
Oh yeah,
494.
So what was that called?
Well, that was. But on a Monday, everybody would go and settle their bets. All the bookies would be there. I mean, it was crazy, and we knew it. We'd be, hey, how you doing? The money's changing hands, and now it's, and of course that was strictly illegal, and now even with the security, I'm trying to think of the guy, the white-haired guy that. The
Kim
security guy
Clowder
for the Vikings. Yeah, he was. There was no security. I mean, we had a bunch of guys that no bar, it was safe. You get a suggestion from I think Bud hired a old retired Minneapolis police guy to tell you places to stay out of, and he'd read it to us. And as soon as we get done with the meeting, Carl Eller or Jim Marsh say, "Oh, that place is looking pretty good. I think I'll hit there." You're just worn out there. And they say, we're going to go over there tonight. Looks like there's some action. No,
that's awesome, though. And anyway. I really appreciate the time talking with you. Honestly, really enjoyed personally, too.
All right. I'll do anything I can help you. Whatever I need. I'm with this pandemic, I got a lot of time on my hands, so anything.
Okay, well, yeah, no, I'll hit you up, because like I said, I'd like to do a couple more of these, or I might get somebody else on them, and stuff like that, kind of change it up. Sure. So perfect. Well, again, I really appreciate it. I hope you and your wife have a fantastic day.
All right.
Talk to you later, man. Yep.
You too, buddy. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stu, do you just want to make sure you end the call?
Okay. I'll
Nope, it's still on.
Uh-oh, okay.
Is there a button on the bottom of the screen that says end caller in the upper left-hand corner? Is there a red arrow? Yep.
Oh, hit that.
And then at the bottom should say end call.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We're getting it.